Hello there, Ole'Pops here. I'm sitting here with a little handmade artisan pipe from the Briar Dude. I don't know if you can actually see the beige colors in the stem. Maybe not. Maybe I'm not in good light here or anything, but it's one of my favorite little pipes. And I have been sitting here most of the morning. Been chatting with my little prayer group from the YTPC for a little while, talking about identifying plants and other things. We had several little topics going on this morning, but Luke Reisner wanted us to identify a plant for him that was growing out of his mulch pile. I'm smoking on some distinguished gentlemen that Corvette Jim shared with me. He let me about half of what he had, and it's really good stuff. And I think we were able to narrow it down to it being some kind of melon or squash or something until John Meadows finally figured out it was a pumpkin. And kudos to him. He narrowed it right down. He figured it right out. This is really good stuff. But I was sitting here working on my book. I was writing, and y'all saw, I'm sure you did, this is a sloppy area in here. This is a closet that I have converted into my desk, and I got a couple of jars of tobacco up in there. But this is my my writer's nook back in here, and I was got all my papers and stuff stuck back in here. Is where I sit back in here and write. But I was stuck back in here writing this morning, and it dawned on me. I got thinking about Jim sharing the title of that book with y'all, and we got a couple of good laughs off of that one. I thought I would, I'd already made a video earlier about sharing a excerpt from my book with y'all, The Test of Time, the book that I'm writing. It's a book about mine and my brother's childhood in a little community in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, called Bakersfield, which was the misconception that it was it was converted student housing for the University of Alabama, but it was not an army barrack. What it was it was an army hospital that was converted over to student housing. It was built as a World War II rehabilitation hospital, and it was built in the late 40s, and then in the late 60s it lasted a little while, but in the 60s the University of Alabama bought the property and converted it over into married student housing for the University of Alabama. Then, sometime later, Hollywood, California, bought the property, and they made a Burt Reynolds film. I don't remember if it was Hooper or The Longest Yard, or which one it was, but it was a prison film, and they actually destroyed Bakersfield in making that movie, and it was sad to see it happen, but we didn't live there anymore. We were already in Murfreesboro by then, but it was sad to see that happen. But they've made a lot of changes to Birmingham. To Tuscaloosa, and a lot of growth has happened. But anyway, I wanted to share an excerpt from the book with y'all. I'm a better writer than I am a reader. So y'all overlook that fact. But I'm going to share a day in the life of a 5.5 and a 7-year-old boy. And it goes something like this. The best way for me to describe Bakersfield is to say it looked like a mechanical gear. It was not exactly round, more oblong, but the houses extended off of it like the teeth on a wheel, except for the ones that were on the inside, top and bottom. Our house was very near the middle on the east side of the complex. The A apartments in each house were closest to the road. The B apartments were in the middle, and the C apartments were on the outside, closest to the fence. By this time, we had been placed in 16C, just outside of the front door. We had a 5x5 stilted porch with high wooden banisters. It stood about 5 feet off the ground. To the right of it, and up against the house, was a sandbox of equal dimension. It would have been a favored place to linger and play as a child had it not been for the neighborhood cats. The sand was so much easier to dig in than that infernal Alabama red clay, and they much preferred it to the beautiful southern wilderness God provided as a litter box. It didn't take but a time or two to convince me that a sandbox was not the place to meet people and influence chicks, especially at 5.5. The remainder of our side yard was about 6 feet of grass, and then there was a 15 to 20 foot high row of thick boxwood shrubbery that grew the entire length of Bakersfield, north to south, from 10th Street to the back fence at the train tracks. The entire length of shrubbery to a 5 foot the entire length of shrubbery to a 5.5-year-old boy was tall and thick as an Amazon rainforest jungle. like it was meant to keep someone out. Or maybe it was there to keep someone in. It wasn't really something I had really given much consideration to. It wasn't a point to ponder until Dan and I started hearing those noises. We were outside playing one morning, like we normally did. Nothing different, nothing special. The gravel in the driveway was made of ground slate, coal, and pitch. So building Tonka roads left both skin and clothing covered with a layer of black and dark gray dust that left permanent stains on the butts and the iron-on knee patches of our jeans. We hated those patches. They felt like cardboard, but Mom said they saved money. We had Grandma's beads wringing our necks and black dusty sweat streaming down out of the crew-cut stubble onto our shirtless shoulders, as all of a sudden our attention was snatched away as if somebody had dropped a lit firecracker at our feet behind our backs. Shing, shing, pop. Shing, pop, pop. Shing, you hear that? I asked. You mean the popping or the ringing? Asked Dan. It wasn't the first time we'd heard it, but it was the first time that we'd been allowed the opportunity to pay attention to it unattended. Mom had taken her magazine and her lemonade back inside. Let's explore. And off we went, digging and dragging for the closest thing to a chink in the armor of that hedge. We scratched and scraped as relentlessly, eagerly as a couple of termites at a soggy baseboard until we found a small crack at the bottom of the boxwood, and before the afternoon was finished, we had burrowed all the way through that fortress of shrub like the opening of a Glencore mine. We weren't disobedient children, but we had been told many times to stay away from the shrub row. Now there was an air of mystique surrounding that high chaparral that drew us like magnets, especially after that experience that we had that morning. Beyond the shrub row was what appeared to a child to be a humongous ditch. As it turned out, it was part of a fire lane that surrounded the perimeter of Bakersfield at the time of its design and construction in the late 40s. What remained of a fire lane was 20 feet across and 20 feet deep, and it ran the entire distance of Bakersfield, north to south, along the east side, behind that boxwood barrier. The briars and the bramble had taken over the fire lane some long, long days ago, and there were bugs and vermin and rodents of different persuasions abiding in the ditch. But to a couple of boys, in broad daylight, this only added to the challenge and the excitement. Besides, there were those noises. What was it? It took both Dan and I working together about 6 days, or close to a week, to tunnel down to the bottom of the fire lane and then back up the other side. We fought blackberry briars, short willow undergrowth, burrowing yellow jackets. But the coolest thing were the stag beetles and the giant rhinoceros beetles. We collected several of those, of both species, in jars with cotton balls full of alcohol, and we put them to sleep. They were like money to a 5.5-year-old. I mean, what kindergartner wouldn't trade a meatloaf sandwich for a miniature triceratops in a jar when all you've got is for lunch is a PB&J? It's money, I tell you. Meatloaf was hard to come by back then for a college student's budget, especially a married college student with 3 young boys. Now, I'm going to leave it right there, and I'm going to let y'all decide if this is a book that y'all might want to finish the rest of that chapter. That's an excerpt from the first chapter. The first chapter is called Baker's Field, and the book is called The Test of Time. It's about us growing up while my dad was going to the University of Alabama, and how he was on the student athletic committee and traveled around with the University of Alabama football team during the time that Bear Bryant and Joe Namath were affiliated with the team, and how I used to travel with the team with him. The noises that we heard that we thought were coming from that ditch turned out to be coming from the other side of that ditch, and there were it's a pretty exciting story there. It's a very, very ethnic and racial time in Alabama's history. At the very end of that ditch was a train track. Some very exciting things happened at that train track. It's a playground in a big field that sat in the center of Bakersfield. A lot of exciting things happened in the center of that. We moved to Murfreesboro when I was 7, same age that Dan was during this time that in this excerpt that I read. The book will carry on to our new neighborhood in Murfreesboro. And anyway, just wanted to introduce y'all to that. So, anyway, just wanted to check in with y'all. And anyway, much love. Y'all take care of each other. I'll see you next time around.